While the Democrats tinker at the edges of labor law, the right wing is just going ahead and proposing we establish company unions. We talked about that earlier. So the working class can escape their corporate overlords' excess wokeness or something.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Every week, Jonah Furman writes a newsletter, Who Gets the Bird. You can read it at whogetsthebird.substack.com, where he compiles a list, almost exhaustive list, of everything that happens in the labor movement in the United States. And what we do, with his permission, is we go through that list and see what happened in the south of the United States last week. And we bring you Last Week in Southern Labor. So in new organizing, 63 workers at a specialty elastomers plant in Cantonment, Florida, which Celanese recently acquired from ExxonMobil. They are organizing with IBEW Local 733. 29 linemen for the Marshall DeKalb Electric Cooperative in Boaz, Alabama, are unionizing with IBEW Local 443. We just talked about that with Bill Blackman. Congressional staffers have announced a historic bid to unionize, as well as the staff of the Financial Times. It looks like the Brotherhood of Railroad Signalmen is raiding a unit of Teamsters maintenance of way workers for railcar manufacturer Alstom in Sanford, Florida. 15 workers in the meat departments of 3 Albertson stores in El Paso, Texas, decertified UFCW Local 540 in a narrow 6-7 vote. In strikes and bargaining, Steelworkers Local 40, on their 126th day on strike, once again went back to the negotiating table with Special Metals in Huntington, West Virginia, and once again came back without a deal, primarily because of health care costs for the 450 strikers. So many reasons that we need to go to a national single-payer healthcare system. 30,000 steel workers, refinery workers nationwide are on a 24-hour rolling contract extension, which was agreed to 30 minutes before the initial strike deadline. Workers rejected a 1% offer, and there hasn't been any public movement from the company since then. Can you imagine the guts on these companies? 1%, a 1% raise in this economy. Good grief. In related news, Grist has a really interesting piece about how those locked out steelworkers in Beaumont, Texas are trying to leverage public funding for a big Exxon carbon capture project to settle a contract. That's very important. 11 of 25 workers who are seeking to unionize at UFCW Local 400 at 3 locations of Food Accelerator Union Kitchen in D.C. struck this weekend after management served disciplinary notices to 2 of the main organizers. Pretty impressive to see what is essentially a recognition strike, which is pretty rare, especially in food service. Staffers at the liberal D.C. think tank Center for American Progress are threatening a strike with the nonprofit Professional Employees Union, IFPTE, in order to raise the wage floor, which currently sits at $40,000 a year.
Wow.
In D.C.
As much as I support their effort, and I wish them all the best, they deserve a union, as does every worker. I don't know. I got to encourage some reflection about how you ended up there, and is that really the place you need to be, and what kind of values does this organization have?
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that.
After some serious work stoppage talk, the National Women's Soccer League Players Association have their first union contract. And the tentative agreement between Huntington Ingalls Steelworkers Local 8888, covering upwards of 10,000 workers, does not yet have a ratification date set, but the union is working on getting members quote-unquote summaries. In politics, there is a new bill in Congress to prohibit employers from cutting health insurance to striking workers, which would be a big deal, as this is a tactic we see used over and over in strikes to force workers to fold. That is huge. While the Democrats tinker at the edges of labor law, the right wing is just going ahead and proposing we establish company unions. We talked about that earlier. So the working class can escape their corporate overlords' excess wokeness or something. That was actually in Marco Rubio's press release, talking about how these are going to be an important tool for workers to escape corporate wokeness.
Yeah, it's just when you're going through the grind, and you've been working hard all day, you know you're not getting enough, your health insurance goes up every year, they cover less medicines every year, your management are complete dicks, they don't know anything about what you do. What really irritates you is the wokeness.
Yeah.
That's what, that's what's really the problem there. It's not anything else that could be going on. It's just, man, they give some weird woke presentations in the HR department.
Yeah.
That's what we're worried about. On the political note, we probably will talk more about these two next week, but a couple of highlights that I've seen from Congress. One, well, both actually seem to be fairly good news. The first one is regarding mandatory arbitration in terms of sexual harassment, sexual assault claims in the workplace. So many folks, in this Me Too era have been speaking up about sexual assault and sexual harassment they've experienced in the workplace. And many of the reasons why, these stories come out so much later is because folks are locked into binding arbitration clauses where, if you are an employee, you're harassed on the job, you have to go through this arbitration process with the company, and you are restricted from just going out and getting your own lawyer or going, to your union to organize other ways to address it. So that seems to be a step in the right direction. It would take sexual harassment claims out of the mandatory arbitration. It leaves everything else, unfortunately. So, if you're signing up to work for a company and that's what they do, they can still do it in terms of other issues you have, contract disputes, racial discrimination. But that would be a step in the right direction for American labor law coming out of Congress. That doesn't happen much. And the other big one I've been hearing is the Postal Service reform.
We've got to get somebody from the letter carriers to talk about that.
What I've seen, and correct me if I'm wrong here, what I've seen is that the unions, the various postal worker unions, are on board with this legislation. It actually has gotten some bipartisan support. And the thing that I heard that really stuck with me, because it's been an issue for so long, was about the pre-funding of retirement pensions for Postal Service employees. Most folks do not realize that many years ago, in an effort to bolster privatization and basically sabotage the Postal Service, it was written into law that they had to pre-fund their retirement pensions for, I believe, 70, 75 years?
75 years.
Nobody does that. No, I mean, that is completely outside the norm of any industry, any kind of retirement benefits. And that was put in place so that they could then turn around and make the arguments that the Postal Service is failing, it's going to go bankrupt, it's unsustainable. So, of course, that means we should privatize and hook up FedEx and DHL and all that.
Of course.
Yeah, so, hey, got a couple good things happening in D.C. That's a rare thing.
Yes, it's always nice when that happens.
Support for this program comes from the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 136, out of Central Alabama. Learn more at ibew136.org.